All right, now we're going to look at the internal renal anatomy, right? So we're going to look at what's happening inside. So what's the function of the kidney? Kidney, we've already talked about so many functions. When we think about the functional unit of the kidney, what are we talking about here? We're specifically talking about the nephron. And the nephron's main function is to produce urine. Okay, so after everything is being processed within the nephron, after going through the glomerulus to the distal convoluted tubule, eventually going down the loop of Henle, descending, ascending, eventually coming out the distal convoluted tubule, and then leaving through the collecting duct, we have now the kidney needs to be excreted out via the ureter and enter the bladder for storage. So if we go on a more of a microscopic level, let's see what's going on. All right, so we have these structures called papillae. So papillae are these structures that are at the terminal ends here. The terminal ends specifically of the pyramid. So we have the renal pyramids here that we talked about before. So the renal pyramids are majority of the cases inside the medulla of the kidney. So we have the cortex, which is outside, and you have the medulla, which is on the inside. And so the papillae's main function is it releases urine into the minor calyxes. So we're going to talk about the calyxes, we're going to talk about the pelvis, where everything is. All right, so you have the papillae. Next structure, we have the lobes. That was really important to look at. So again, we talked about the lobes, the different lobes. So you have the cortex, which is the outer layer, and you have the medulla, which is the inner layer. And so in the medulla specifically, you have these renal pyramids here that are this triangular shape. That's why the name pyramids, right? And then you have these renal columns. Renal columns are in between the the pyramids. And so what's really important about these is you can also see that there's different blood vessels that are coming through here. So in pink, these are the renal arteries bringing in oxygenated blood into the kidneys, and then you have the renal veins, which take away carbon dioxide infiltrated blood, right? So deoxygenated blood. And then finally at the end here, right before it becomes, the kidney becomes the ureter, you have this region right here called the renal pelvis. So the renal pelvis right here is responsible for the final transport of urine down the ureter and into the bladder. Okay, so if we talk about the mechanism of what's going on here, it's really simple. Okay, so urine is produced here at the top. So right here, I have the nephron that's produced here. So this is the nephron. The nephron, if you remember, has different structures. This long structure here, this was called the collecting duct. So the collecting duct transfers all the urine that's produced from the nephron, and this next structure here, so let's make a little column of what's going on. So you have the collecting duct, which eventually branches off and it becomes the papillary duct. So the papillary duct now is transferring every urine particle or particulate down to these little tubes here. These little tubes here are called the calyces in yellow. The calyces here, you have the minor, which is the smaller one, and the major. Okay, so it first goes through the minor because it's smaller if you look at it from the picture. So the minor callus, and then finally the major calyx. And after that, eventually now it becomes what? It goes all the way down, dance, it goes all the way down, the urine flows, and eventually we have the renal pelvis. And so at the renal pelvis, this is where it becomes part of the ureter. Okay, and we said what the function of the ureter was, right? So you have the different types of mechanisms, so beginning from the collecting duct and ending with the renal pelvis, where urine, it gets transported all the way into the bladder, right? So this is just a basic internal renal anatomy that we're going to be talking about.